There was a shouting match in Gordon House today as tempers flared over the issue of the outstanding extradition request for Tivali Garden strongman Christopher Dudus Coke. In response to numerous questions from the opposition, Prime Minister Bruce Golding declared that the government was not seeking to delay the extradition but simply trying to uphold the law. Not for the first time, a tough-talking Prime Minister found himself explaining why the government had not extradited Tivali Garden strongman Christopher Dudus Coke, a former National Security Minister, the one posing the question again. Dr. Peter Phillips wanted to know how many Jamaicans had been extradited since August, the same month the government got Mr. Coke's extradition request. He wanted to know how many people had been extradited since the JLP took office, and the answers, 31 extraditions since 2007, one request approved since August, led Dr. Phillips to the question he really wanted answered.
And explain why, in relation to the grant of authority to proceed, it seems to have been taking longer than the average.
This request was received in August of 2009, on the 25th of August 2009, which means that a period of 3.5 months would have so far elapsed. That is not unusual.
That led the Prime Minister to argue that the Attorney General was not engaging in delay tactics, just trying to uphold the law.
The request did not comply with the internal laws of the requested state, and therefore it is not a matter as to whether the minister is inclined to authorize the extradition. It is a question that the minister would be authorizing something that she knows to be in violation of the law.
When Dr. Phillips tried to quote from a newspaper report, the Speaker said Parliament's standing orders did not allow that. But it was this question that ruffled members the most.
Has a meeting occurred between members of the Cabinet and the person that is subject to extradition request? Can the Prime Minister tell us whether it has happened or not? That's not hypothetical.
The Prime Minister is ultimately responsible for everything.
No, it's an inappropriate question.
The Prime Minister is responsible.
I have ruled we move on. Question 39.
I'm not aware that any member of the Cabinet has met with anyone who is the subject of an extradition request. In the same way that I'm not aware whether any member of the opposition has attended funerals for persons who were persons of interest.
The Prime Minister later repeated that he did not want to discuss the matter in any greater detail because he had advised the U.S. authorities that the sensitive issue would not be discussed in the public arena.
And the Prime Minister has rubbished claims of a link between the extradition request for Dudus and the delay in the naming of a U.S. ambassador to Jamaica. Mr. Golding said an ambassador had been selected but opted to go to Costa Rica instead when a vacancy developed there.
Because the person that was designated for Costa Rica withdrew, and this particular person, who is a very strong environmental advocate and who apparently is very attracted to the environmental program in Costa Rica, opted to go there. We await the appointment of a U.S. ambassador in the same way that many other countries are awaiting the appointment.
The previous U.S. ambassador, Brenda LaGrange Johnson, left Jamaica this year after serving just over 3 years. There were reports that the failure to get a new one was directly linked to the delay in responding to the extradition request for Dudus.
Former Minister of National Security Dr. Peter Phillips demanded answers from Prime Minister Bruce Golding regarding the extradition of Tivali Garden strongman Christopher Dudus Coke. The Prime Minister disclosed that since the JLP came to power, 31 persons have been extradited. However, the session descended into a brawl as PNP members wanted direct answers. Andrew Cannon witnessed the uproar.
It would appear that Dr. Phillips has been burning with zeal to confront the Prime Minister on the controversial extradition issue. In reeling off statistics, Mr. Golden said there was a case where the PNP administration took 7.5 months to extradite someone. So far, 3.5 months have elapsed since the request for Coke. He wasn't finished though. Mr. Golden said a PNP minister flouted an extradition ruling by the Court of Appeal.
The minister did not sign the extradition order, as a result of which, having spent several months in jail, his lawyer simply applied to the courts that he could no longer be extradited.
However, the issue of whether the Justice Minister is simply dragging her feet for political reasons was hinted at. Mr. Golding was adamant that the extradition request has not been complied with because an element of the request contravenes Jamaican law.
It is not a matter as to whether the minister is inclined to authorize the extradition. It is a question that the minister would be authorizing something that she knows to be in violation of the law.
Central Kingston MP Ronald Thwaites pounced on that point. He wanted specifics. Nothing was forthcoming though from Mr. Golding, as according to him, it would be inappropriate to divulge details given the spirit of the talks. Mr. Thwaites would not be swayed, and that's when the Dudus ruckus exploded in the House.
Why not just answer the question? We need to know what the position is that is at odds regarding the law. It has nothing to do with the guilt or innocence of this gentleman.
No, but Reverend Thwaites, it may well be.
Any proceedings in law?
No, Reverend Thwaites.
What aspect of Jamaican law can be beyond this parliament?
No, Reverend.
And the member could insist all he wants. I'm telling the House with the greatest of respect, it is not possible for me to go into the kind of details that he's seeking me to divulge.
More uproar was to come when Dr. Phillips asked, does the Prime Minister think it's appropriate or inappropriate for members of the Cabinet to meet with someone for whom an extradition request is being made? Mr. Chuck declared that the question was lacking in specifics and a violation of the standing orders. Dr. Phillips retreated only to come back for a direct attack. Is the Prime Minister aware that members of his cabinet met with someone for whom an extradition request is being made?
The Prime Minister is ultimately responsible for everything.
No, it's an inappropriate question.
The Prime Minister is responsible.
I have ruled we move on. Question 39.
Not so fast though, as there was this salvo from the Prime Minister.
I'm not aware that any member of the Cabinet has met with anyone who is the subject of an extradition request. In the same way that I'm not aware whether any member of the opposition has attended funerals for persons who were persons of interest.
The extradition controversy continues. Andrew Cannon, CVM News.
Now, meanwhile, the Prime Minister insisted that the non-naming of a U.S. ambassador to Jamaica so far has nothing to do with the extradition matter. According to him, the individual who was named as U.S. ambassador to Jamaica decided not to take up the offer and opted to go to Puerto Rico instead for environmental reasons. He further told the House that there are several other countries without U.S. ambassadors at the moment, as the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee is busy addressing other foreign affairs matters.